Hi class, this video is a selection of homework examples from section 9.1, Roots and Radicals. This one says find the positive and negative square roots of this number 49. That means two answers. If we were to take the square root of 49, we know the square root is a positive 7, but there's also a negative square root, which would be negative 7, because we can multiply negative 7 times negative 7, and that equals positive 49, and so does 7 times 7. So your two answers with the comma between them is 7, comma, negative 7. The next kind of question you'll see on your homework, it says find the indicated principal or negative square root. If you're working with a square root, the indicated principal square root is the positive root. So that previous problem, we found the positive and negative. And so when it's asking for the indicated principal or the negative square root, notice the word or, it just wants one answer. In this answer, the square root of 10, the principal square root is 10. Okay, at the bottom of the screen, the indicated principal square root. Okay, take a look at the bottom one. This is the negative square root of the fraction 1/4. Remember, one big fraction can be broken down into two smaller fractions. The square root of 1 in the numerator is 1. The square root of 4 in the denominator is 2. Those are the principal square roots. It will be a negative 1/2 because there was a negative on the outside of the original radical. And so your final answer is negative 1/2. Okay, let's do another example. It says find the indicated principal or negative square root. This time, notice there's a negative 64 under a square root. So remember what square root is looking for. It's a number times itself. Is there a number times itself that equals negative 64? Well, that's impossible, because in order to have a negative as the answer as a multiplication problem, you have to multiply a negative times a positive, and that would not be the same. And so this one you would just write impossible. Okay, next is the negative square root of 36, and this would be 6 is the square root of 36, but it's going to be negative because there was a negative on the outside. I don't have an example typed out, but it would be okay if there was a negative under a cubed root. And we did talk about this in class, or perhaps you've watched a video. This would be negative 2. Because you can take negative 2 times negative 2 times negative 2, and that produces negative 8. Because remember, you just multiply two numbers at a time. So negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4, and then positive 4 times negative 2 is back to the negative 8. So it is okay to have a negative under the radical if it's a cubed root or a fifth root. Basically, when the index number is odd, but it's not possible to solve a square root if there's a negative under the radical. Okay, next, this says classify the number as rational or irrational. The main thing you need to understand to answer these questions is that rational is taking the square root of a perfect square number, and irrational is not. So if you look at the first one, the square root of 12, 12 is not a perfect square number, and so it's irrational. Like if you were to type that into your calculator, the square root of 12 is just some small decimal that goes on forever and ever. Negative square root of 9/16. This would be the square root of 9 over the square root of 6. Both of those are perfect square numbers. So this would be a negative 3/4, which that is a terminating decimal. And so that would be an example of a rational number. Okay, that's all for this video. Please let me know if you have any questions.